From the loveliest village on the plains, this is the Southeastern Sports Podcast.
45, there goes Davis. Oh my God! Davis is going to run it all the way back. Auburn's going to win the football game. Auburn's going to win the football game. He ran the missed field goal back. He ran it back 109 yards. They're not going to keep him off the field tonight.
The 2-1. Swung line drive left field. One run is in. Here comes Green. Here's the throw to the plate. He is safe. Braves win. Braves win. Ross swings enough drive to deep left field. That one's gone. That one's gone. Auburn wins. Auburn wins. Auburn wins. Auburn wins.
He's going to heave one deep down the field. It's going to be to the goal line. It's going to be gone. It's a touchdown. And the Gators have won the game. Tyree Cleveland. Oh, my. I can't believe what I just saw.
There goes Herschel. There goes Herschel. Herschel Walker scores. Man, did he turn it on when he had to. Black's got one setback and four wide receivers. Desperation play. Black's going to throw in the end zone. Got a man wide open. Larson, he's got it. Touchdown, Auburn. Touchdown, Auburn.
Now with this week's show, here's John Abrams, Riley Hubbard, and Braison Pierce.
Welcome on in to the Southeastern Sports Podcast. I am here joined with John Abrams, Braison Pierce, Carson Barnett, Walker Schumacher Bailey. Guys, thank you so much for joining in. Episode 1. Very excited to get this off.
Howdy.
And rolling. Going to focus on the Braves, SEC football, SEC basketball, SEC baseball, the best region of sports in the entire country, and we're going to cover it. And we're gonna cover it 100%. No pro stuff either, other than baseball, right? No NBA, no NFL.
Only if it's Auburn graduates.
Yeah, SEC and Braves. That's mostly where we lie. So, Braison, what was the first thing you wanted to talk about this week?
I thought we were going to talk about the Braves and just how they've had a really good first half of the season. They're leading the NL East by I think it's 6.5 games, and they're over 500 now.
It's true. 6.5 games over the Washington Nationals. The All-Star break currently going on, but the Braves ended the first half of the season a lot better than I think most people expected them to. Some people might have expected them to lead the division, but maybe not by so much. So what do you think has been the key to success, John?
I think it's start hitting. You know, they've gotten a lot of big bats in there. Acuna's really taken off. Freeman killing it. Yeah, Austin Riley have been big coming out of the minor leagues. So, yeah, been the hitting.
People have been excited about Austin Riley for quite a while, and I think it's great that he's finally made his debut. People are finally being able to see him. And if it weren't for Pete Alonso, might be a Rookie of the Year candidate in the National League. Of course.
Alonso play for
Pete Alonso plays for the Mets.
He also won the Home Run Derby.
And he is not the Rookie of the Year. Mike Soroka is the Rookie of the Year.
Oh, man. Wow.
Try hard,
Hot
Pete.
take here from Garb.
Anyone can hit 28 home runs, but you know Soroka's having a really impressive season.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look over Soroka. Soroka's been the ace, and you don't normally want your ace to be that young of a guy, but
it's been working for him.
Yeah,
man.
It's been working for the Braves. He's had the last couple of starts heading into the All-Star break were a little bit sluggish, but overall, very impressive season out of Soroka. Max Fried has had a great year, even though kind of same deal there. The last few starts been kind of iffy. Fultonevich has not really been himself, and Tehran has been typical hit or miss Tehran. So,
but he's hit more than he's missed.
Mike.
If you look at the rotation as a whole, Fried and Soroka, the youngest guys out there, are the ones that are leading the charge.
Yeah. And Dallas Keuchel's also coming into his own now. He had a really good start last time out. It was against the Marlins, though. So,
gotta take it with a grain of salt, but still a great start. As far as around just the NL East, people thought that the Phillies were going to be the team to beat. And I still think that the Phillies are the team to beat. That the Nationals are just kind of on a hot stretch at the moment. What do you think about that, Braison?
I don't really agree. I think the Braves are the team to beat in the division now. Obviously, the Phillies have what most would consider the premier talent in the division in Bryce Harper. That fit hasn't really been that great so far.
Yeah, well, when you pay somebody $26 million a year to hit 240,
that's
no good, and pretty much all their free agent money is gone now.
Yeah, And the Nationals have a solid team, but yeah, like you said, I don't really think they're the team to beat. Their pitching just isn't. Their starting pitching has been really good, but their bullpen is just terrible.
Well, speaking of terrible bullpens, the Achilles heel for the Braves has been when their starting pitching comes out and they have to relieve on their long relievers and even into the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning guys out of the bullpen, and they usually blow the games for the Braves. I mean, do you think if you're Anthropoulos right now, are you going to try to sell at the deadline are you going to try to be a buyer at the deadline and get some bullpen help, or are you just going to rely on Minter as your closer?
I do think the bullpen gets a little bit of a bad rap. They've actually been performing pretty well since the trade for Anthony Swarzak, who's really been what the bullpen needed, it seems like.
Okay, so one guy.
But
Luke Jackson is the best closer in all of Major League Baseball.
Is he even technically the closer anymore? I feel like
he has like
Minter is the closer.
No, Minter has not
Luke
closed
Jackson's
a game
the
in like a month. But my point is, the Braves have Riley, let me finish.
Last week.
The Braves have the lowest bullpen ERA in the major leagues since Swarzak has joined the team. So the bullpen may still be the worst part of the team, but it's certainly gotten a lot better.
You think
that being said, I would buy at the deadline. I would trade for more relievers.
Well, who are you thinking? Would you get Brad Hand from the Indians if he's available?
I feel like the price might be high on Brad Hand, considering the Indians traded one of their top prospects to the Padres for him. But maybe Will Smith from the Giants. He's a pretty good
that
one.
would be a good one to get. Not many people are aware of how good Will Smith is, but he's had a great half.
The Fresh Prince, yeah.
Yeah. Just think about the fact that guy's name is Will Smith, just how much stuff he gets.
Probably not that much.
I mean, the guy's name is Will Smith. I'm sure he hears it all the time. Just like Carlos Santana
I'm
from
sure
the
he
Indians.
does hear his own name all the time, yeah.
The guitar player?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The singer.
Yeah.
Good. Anyway, Braves had a great first half of the season. John, I want your prediction right now. If they win the division, by how many? If they lose the division, by how many and to whom?
The Braves will win the division.
By?
5 games.
5-4? Braison?
I would say that's a solid prediction. The Braves are going to win it. Just for the sake of having a different prediction, I'll say the Braves go.
5.5.
No, I'll say 8 games. 8
Wow.
lead. So
Basketball loving Carson, you've been awfully quiet. What do you think?
I think the Nationals are going to win the division by half a game.
All right,
Wow.
Carson is clueless. Walker, football loving Walker, you've also been quiet. Go ahead and tell us.
I can't really speak to the NL East race, but I can speak to Braves games live in person. I went to go see a Braves game against the Phillies with Braison and John and a couple other people the other day, and the bats were flying. If that Braves team is the one that shows up for the rest of the season, I think it's the Braves.
Bye.
Say 4 games.
Okay.
Good prediction.
I'll take Braves. I'll say
I think Carson got a bad deal on his prediction.
Yeah, I mean,
the Nationals
disagree,
are a good
but
matchup for the Braves, I think.
The
Nationals might end up actually having a better chance than the Phillies.
I think the Nationals are definitely a bigger threat to the Braves than the Phillies, just based on matchup.
Unless the Phillies really just turn things around after the break.
Which is very possible. They have the talent.
I know.
They definitely have the talent to do so. They definitely have the talent to do so. I'll take Braves. They open up a lead, but near the end start to choke. Make it 3 games for the Braves.
Speaking of the Braves' second half of the season, Ender Inciarte has been hurt. In his absence, Austin Riley has performed very well, been really impressive. You have to think they're going to keep him in the starting lineup. Once Ender comes back, what do you do with him? Do you trade him for a reliever? Do you keep him as a pinch runner or defensive replacement? And if so, whose roster spot does he take?
Well, the thing is, normally you would put Austin Riley at third base, which is a natural position. You can't move Donaldson. Obviously, when the season is over, you can assume that Donaldson will leave, put Austin Riley there. But for the time being, I would say keep Riley in left, keep Acuna in center, and keep Markakis in right. I mean, Ender can ride the bench for now, and he'll be able to play next
I'm
year.
not suggesting putting him back in the starting lineup.
Were you the one that told me that Acuna's been a bad center fielder?
No.
Okay. Well, I heard from the last couple of days somebody say that Acuna clearly is not a natural center fielder and all that. I don't really buy into that. I think he's done a great job, and he can do it for the rest of the year.
I think he's made the plays, but he just always doesn't take the best route to the ball.
Well, he's naturally a left and right fielder, corner outfielder.
He usually makes the plays, so it doesn't matter. I mean, better than Austin Riley in left, though.
In 2013,
Austin Riley doesn't take bad routes to the ball. I think he's just slow.
He does.
We got to keep in mind, in 2013, the Braves
defensive metrics, John.
The Braves put Evan Gattis in left field. So compared to something like that, I think Acuna in center and Riley's left. It's just fine, and it's working just fine. Riley
I'm not saying change anything. I'm just saying.
All I want to say is
that's not where the natural position.
According to defensive metrics, Riley has been better as far as routes than Charlie Culberson in left field. That's all I'm going to say.
If you believe defensive metrics.
Okay.
Do you believe in defensive runs saved?
I mean,
or wins above replacement in field?
It's not an exact science yet, but I think it certainly can help gauge how good a player is.
It's very strange how they calculate that, because if you take the biggest amount of runs saved in each position on the field, the outfielders have more, runs saved than the infielders do. And that doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense to me. I feel like most of the game is played in the infield. Maybe
it's like if they make the play versus if they don't make the play. Because if an outfielder makes an error, it's probably going to cost their team a run. But if an infielder makes an error, it just costs probably a base.
And you have an assumption on what is considered, a routine play.
Right.
So, that's a good debate. We'll probably pick that up another time.
Yes, we will.
But for now, we're going to take a break from the Braves, and we're going to move into some college football talk. Woo! Specifically, Auburn football. We're on the loveliest village on the plain, so that's where we're going to start, is with the Auburn Tiger offense. When we come back, you're listening to the Southeastern Sports Podcast.
We're talking about the best region of sports in the country. This is the Southeastern Sports Podcast.
Darn right it is. Best region of sports in the country. And a big reason for that is because of the powerhouse of college football. I don't think any of us would disagree. That would be the Southeastern Conference. Since we were in Auburn, we're going to eventually, before the season starts, we're going to go over every team and what we think about their different units, offense, defense. But we're going to start where we're comfortable, and that's Auburn, Alabama. So we're going to start with the Auburn Tigers
War
offense.
Eagle, baby.
Yeah, we're going to have a little bit of Auburn bias on this show, but that's okay.
Just a little bit.
Lots of position groups to be excited about, lots of position groups to kind of have a question mark around, lots of position groups that you really just don't know what to expect. And obviously at quarterback, there's still a battle going on between Joey Gatewood and Bo Nix.
And Malik Willis.
Malik Willis has transferred to Liberty University to be with Hugh Freeze, so he is not involved. But what do you guys think? What do y'all want to start out with?
Let's talk about the wide receivers, I think. We got Seth Williams is going to be the number one for sure.
Future NFL talent.
I think he's got to be. But the question is, who's going to be your number two guy? I think Eli Stove will probably get that. Some people might say Sal Cannella just because of his size, but he's not reliable enough, I don't think. Yeah. I think it'll be Stove or Will Hastings, probably.
Well, the thing with Hastings is he's 100% a slot receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't
though.
Yeah, but he's kind of a special guy just because of his size and kind of what his role is. I don't know if he can be a number two. I would lean towards Stove, like you said.
And
I agree.
A kind of dark horse in this conversation would probably be Marquise McLean.
Yes.
Coaches have been saying a lot of good things about him in the spring and summer. But I think at the slot, is Anthony Schwartz starting in this?
I would assume so.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically did last year, right?
I don't know if he's
maybe in the latter part of the season. He definitely got a lot of time there. So
yes.
I would say my dark horse would be Matthew Hill, another guy who had a really good spring, redshirted last year. I think he could really be a good number two receiver and complement Seth Williams'
The best
role.
part of Auburn's entire offense last year really was the receiving core with Darius Slayton, Seth Williams. Who else am I leaving out here? Somebody
Ryan
pretty big.
Davis.
Ryan Davis. Yeah,
Yes.
there he is. The
Just Auburn's all-time leader in
all-time
receptions.
leader
That's
in
all.
receptions, Ryan Davis. Losing those three guys, it's going to be really tough, and it's going to be really difficult to replace them.
I think one thing about Slayton, great player, put up monster stats for Auburn in a lot of games. I think his absence will actually open the field up more for Seth Williams to go downfield. He's less of a rack guy, receiving yards after catch, but he's a guy that's going to pretty much catch the ball anytime you throw it to him. So I think Seth Williams is going to be a huge part of the offense this year as a deep threat, as just kind of your every position guy out there on the field at wide receiver.
Well, Seth Williams was a great player last year. I mean, look at the A&M game.
Mm-hmm.
Great play.
Yeah, he definitely has NFL
He had
talent.
a few great plays. I mean, he's going to do big things, I think.
Yeah, especially as now with Slayton out of the way, like Walker said, he becomes the number one. Moving on, a big debate last year was why Cam Martin continued to be a starting running back at the beginning part of the season. Jatavius Whitlow obviously kind of came up as really carried the load because of how well he played. Also, Sean Shivers looked like he was going to be the Ronnie Brown to the Cadillac Williams a couple of games, but for whatever reason didn't get a whole lot of playing time. What do you guys think about the running back situation? You think Shivers should get more time than he did last year?
I think Shivers should definitely get more time. A lot of people just think he's kind of a speed guy, which he is. That's his main attribute, but just because of his size. But he really impressed me last year running through the tackles and breaking tackles from like SEC linebackers. So I think he should probably be featured a little bit more, but I still think Whitlow will be the starter, and I think you'll see a lot of different guys back there.
There was one game, I don't remember what it was, I think it might have been the LSU game that Auburn eventually lost, where you saw Shivers a lot, and it looked like a tag team between Whitlow and Shivers.
Yes.
And myself, I thought, hey, this is great. This is going to be the new Brown and Cadillac kind of thing. And then Shivers just didn't get a whole lot of touches the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. What do you think is the reason for that?
I think a lot of that comes from Gus Malzahn's tradition of quote-unquote tradition of a 1,000-yard rusher and trying to get Boobie Whitlow to 1,000 yards, which didn't happen.
But is that a good reason?
It's not a good reason, but it's probably the reason I would choose.
Yeah.
Other than maybe I don't know, something that we don't know from the coaching aspect.
And see,
coaching
it
side of
happened
things.
with Carrion too in 2017. You know, there were other backs that could have gotten touches, but Carrion was the only one you ever saw out there, hardly.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I think there needs to be a lot of guys getting a lot of touches in the backfield.
And I
for
mean,
Auburn.
we've got a stable. Just name the list: DJ Williams, Sean Shivers, Whitlow, Cam Martin, and other guy, Harold Joyner even.
And
Yeah.
Malik Miller, short yardage,
Yeah.
not as big of a name.
Auburn
obviously.
is just so deep at that
Yeah.
position.
And that's not even to mention Mark Anthony Richards,
Oh my
another
gosh.
big-time recruit. So
Right.
It should be exciting to watch Auburn's run offense.
I think it's going to be good for Auburn that the 1,000-yard streak ended because Malzahn will actually use his running backs probably in more of like a situational way.
And not have the paranoia of having to hit that number.
And not just have one guy carry the whole
Even though
load.
Whitlow, I would assume, would be the number one guy, even though Cam Martin,
Yeah,
for
I
whatever
would-
reason, continues to show up.
I would
Whitlow's
agree.
earned that position, I think.
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
No doubt.
Whitlow did a tremendous job last year. Now on to the biggest one. That would be the quarterback position. Lots of debating going on around Auburn. I've heard a couple of people say that we should keep our ear out at media days for an announcement from Gus Malzahn. I do not expect that in any way,
I
shape,
agree with
form,
you.
or
They
fashion.
must not watch a lot of Auburn
If
football.
I
Or
know
pay attention
anything
to it.
about Gus Malzahn is that he will not be doing that.
No.
And that the first question asked to him in the media room, maybe even the big room, will be, well, where are you leaning on the quarterback position? And his response will be,
I'm not
well,
gonna
it's a
tell you,
toss.
so quit asking.
No, it won't be that. It's basically a toss-up between the two. They've really both done great jobs. They're very impressive in practice. Yada yada yada. Basic coach talk. He's not going to tell us where he's leaning. Where are you leaning John Abrams?
I think Joey Gatewood's going to get the start. Who's the better quarterback? I have no clue right now. I just haven't seen him play enough,
Braison?
Well, I think Joey Gatewood is more of a power runner. Nix is more of a speed guy, although people don't really think of him as that. He runs, I think, a 4.5 40.
You say Nix is a speed guy?
Yes, not to say Gatewood is slow. I just think, dare I say, I think Gatewood fits more the Cam Newton style of runner.
Well, he looks like Cam.
Well, yeah, that's what Gus would say.
Right, and Nix was listed as a dual threat quarterback out of high school.
And he didn't get to show that a lot in high school. I think that was partially due to an injury, but he does have some speed. Ultimately, I think you just go with who fits the offense better. And on the surface, that might look like Joey Gatewood because of the success with Cam Newton, but I think really a Nick Marshall type, which is, I would say, more speed,
right,
is the ideal fit. And I think Bo Nix has that. And he also has the passing precision more so than Nick Marshall.
Mr. Carson Barnett, where do you stand on here?
I'm gonna go with Braison on this one and just say that as far as like the dual threat goes, I just think Nix brings that to the table, and it'll really just like push him over the top and get the starting position.
Okay. And I think Nix would be, most people would agree that Nix is probably a better passer as well. But
although Gatewood is not a terrible passer,
neither one of them is terrible. I mean, they're competing for a QB job at an SEC school. Neither one of them are terrible.
I think it's ultimately just based on fit rather than who's better, because I think they're pretty even talents.
Walker, what do you think?
For kind of selfish Auburn reasons, as far as like the long-term health of the program goes, I would love to see Joey Gatewood start this year and Nix maybe redshirt or play behind him. But I think Nix might end up being, I think he might be right now and might end up being the more talented quarterback. But that being said, I think Joey Gatewood, a player he really reminds me of as far as his high school highlights and the things he's done in spring games and the times he's started, has been Dak Prescott. I think he's super close. I think he might even have a better arm. But I think he could really do some things with the Auburn offense, and I think Bo Nix could too. So I think it's kind of a win-win either way.
Right. Well, I'm kind of piggybacking off of that. My thought was I would not be against seeing Nix redshirt and, just kind of stay underneath the offense, maybe take a few snaps and let Gatewood start, and then Nix come in and start next year. Obviously, depending on how Gatewood does, if he, does this tremendous job, obviously he would keep the job. If not, Nix would receive it. But the way it's going, it looks like there's more and more hype around Bo Nix, and he might just start as a true freshman.
I think that
which is very risky, but also you could get a big reward out of that.
It's worked out for other programs, so right. Here's one question I have. What do y'all think about a two-quarterback system?
If you have two quarterbacks, you don't have any quarterbacks.
I think
most of the time
it can work with quarterbacks that really are different players, and I think even though Nix and Gatewood are obviously pretty different players, I think there's too much similarity there to be
the reason I asked that is because look at 2010 LSU. They had a really solid year that year.
Who was that? Mettenberger and
was that Jordan
Lee,
Jefferson?
Jordan Jefferson.
Yeah,
Jefferson got the bulk of that though.
Jefferson did, yeah.
Jefferson did, yes.
And he was the running quarterback.
And you could also say, I guess, Kentucky had the two quarterback system as well this year.
This year?
Yes.
Did they?
I thought Terry Wilson was really there.
Terry Wilson had the bulk, but they also had Jones.
I think it's an interesting concept, and if it could work, I think that might be like the best offense that Auburn could have. But
if you could have both of them playing at a high level throughout the entire game, I mean, that seems kind of unstoppable to me.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
But
I think
in the past, it hasn't worked for Auburn. That's the thing. In 2012, you had about three quarterbacks. You had Kyle Frazier, Clint Mosley, and Barrett Trotter had just graduated.
Well, I think Jonathan
Wallace. Thank you.
Jonathan Wallace was actually the last. No, I take that back. I didn't say anything.
That was
Jeremy Johnson was the last true freshman to start a game for
Auburn.
of course.
Yeah.
Jonathan Wallace before him.
Ooh, rip Jonathan Wallace.
Oh, man. God, those are some bad memories. But I do have to bring it up because they kept on going in and out with the QBs that year, and obviously didn't end up being a great year for Auburn.
I think the only thing with that
Oh, go ahead.
No, you got it, Walker.
I was just gonna say the only thing with that is like we weren't coming in the year planning to start multiple quarterbacks. I think that was Kyle Frazier's year. He just
Right, he just kind of blew the job.
yeah. So I think that's why that probably didn't work because he had 2 backups, a second and third string.
Even though Mosley started game 1, I think.
Did he? I can't remember.
Yeah, honestly,
Yeah. We'll try to
I blocked
erase
most of that season out.
2012 out of our mind. But anyway, guys, it's going to be an exciting year. A lot of things to get excited about: quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receiver. Walker, what you got?
I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about Kenny Dillingham and y'all's thoughts on the new OC.
I am very confused as to what his role is, and I know that at Memphis he was pretty successful, and that when he came in, he was hired, and they also announced Cody Burns as the passing coordinator. So it seems to me that Kenny Dillingham, he's pretty much going to be a quarterback's coach.
Yeah.
He's pretty much just going to primarily work with quarterbacks. He also does not call plays. So to call him an offensive coordinator, it's a little bit deceiving because he's not going to work a whole lot with receivers, i.e. that's what Cody Burns is for,
Right.
and he's not going to work a whole lot with play calling because that is Gus Malzahn's responsibility, as it was announced at the end of last year. Malzahn did his same thing that he did with Lashley, and he kind of just blamed all of the bad play calling on Chip Lindsey and shipped him out.
Yeah.
And so now he is completely in charge. Auburn fans seem to like that more after the Purdue game. And Dillingham, he's really not a coordinator. Really just works with quarterbacks and works on the offensive side of the ball.
And while that may be a misleading
Title
to give to him, I think that's the way to go because the knock on Gus has always been he can't develop quarterbacks, and the impression I get is Dillingham is just a quarterbacks coach, and he's going to work with the quarterbacks. Malzahn and Cody Burns are going to handle the in-game offensive play calling,
and that might work.
Yeah, and although
it seemed to in the Purdue game, like you said.
Yes.
So if you can get that result every game, then.
Yeah.
There's going to be no complaint.
But this is the SEC. It's not the Big Ten.
It is different, I know. But
The Big Ten.
if you can,
but
yeah.
I also think that I think this is a great hire. It's we still have a lot to be determined here, but if you think about it, I think Gus Malzahn just needs a yes man at offensive coordinator, and that's what Kenny Dillingham is. That's no knock on him. He's a young coach. He's probably not going to be at Auburn for more than 5 years.
No way.
But he's a high energy guy, good recruiter, and a good quarterbacks coach by all accounts. So I think that really plays into Gus Malzahn's
Not a
favor.
whole lot of staff changes, but the two most notable ones were bringing in Dillingham and replacing Tim Horton as a running backs coach, who I thought did a fine job to bring in Cadillac Williams. And also, Horton was the recruiting coordinator. So kind of interesting that you kick him out of the way after how much success he had at Auburn.
Definitely, and I have no basis for this, but that has to be some kind of in-house dispute between
something
him and
that we
Malzahn.
can't see as far as results.
Surely,
didn't make
because
any sense.
yes, but I think anyone else, and this might have been kind of a really a negative situation for Auburn, but I think bringing in Cadillac Williams, that was a home run hire.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of that. Big fan of Cadillac as well. Well, go ahead.
And I'm checking on this right now, but I think Kenny Dillingham, obviously he's going to be focusing mostly on quarterbacks, but his last year at Memphis did have 2 running backs that I believe were over 700 yards rushing. So that's definitely something that I would like to see.
How much will he work with running backs?
Well, I know, but I'm just saying I think he can pull up part of that responsibility, maybe left behind by Tim Horton. Hopefully on the recruiting trail as well, being that he's a young guy.
That's a lot of slack to pick up on the recruiting trail for Auburn.
That is, and that'll be tough to pick up.
Well, we're going to take a quick break here on the Southeastern Sports Podcast. When we come back, what are we talking about when we come back, Braison?
We're going to be talking about the Major League All-Star Game, Home Run Derby, and some of the formats thereof.
It was an exciting weekend, but they didn't play for anything. Should we change that? We'll talk about that when we come back.
Now more of the Southeastern Sports Podcast with John, Riley, and Braison.
Welcome back in. Southeastern Sports Podcast, Episode 1. Here with John Abrams, Braison Pierce, Carson Barnett, and Walker Schumont Bailey this episode. Lots going on in the world of baseball. We touched on the Braves' first half of the season, but also the All-Star break. A lot of exciting events during All-Star weekend in Cleveland this year, but we're going to nitpick it a little bit. Braison, you made this point in the break. The All-Star game used to be for home field advantage during the World Series. Has it lost some of its charm because it's not for anything, or is it just fair that way? And also the Home Run Derby, the champion now gets $1 million. Some opinions on that, and also just the All-Star game in general, as far as who was picked, who wasn't picked, and how this weekend is great publicity for the game, but how it could be better. John, what are your thoughts?
I think that this home run derby we had in Cleveland this year was probably one of the most exciting I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. Even though the balls are juiced.
Yeah, they are juiced.
I'm just kidding.
But, Vlad broke every record.
Yeah,
in this home run derby.
I don't think that it's fair that they say he broke Josh Hamilton's record because
it is a different system, I know. But
and he got an extra minute, and he got an extra 6 swings on top of that, so they really shouldn't count that.
True.
I'm impressed, but they shouldn't count all that.
I think they should separate the records between each format.
Record broken or not, he hit 91 home runs. That's going to be exciting.
That's impressive.
So,
but if you take away the minute and the extra 6 swings,
it's still impressive.
He crushed those balls.
I mean, some of them were bouncing off the scoreboard. That's just But that's stuff you don't see from a rookie that often.
No.
But I think it's funny that he stole the show, even though Pete Alonso ultimately won it on the weaker side of the bracket.
Well, no, not to knock on Pete Alonso, but I think most people would agree Vlad probably deserved that win. Alonso hit, I want to say, half 50. As many home runs.
52, something like that.
And, I mean, again, no knock on the guy, but...
Yeah, but at the end of the day, this is something that's just for fun. Mm-hmm. And personally, I'm in favor of the new format just because the old format, they could take as many pitches as they wanted and yada, yada, yada. This, it's like it's timed. It's a little bit more pressure. It's a little bit unfair to whoever's pitching to them because they can totally ruin a guy's chances.
Chapman's dad, I felt bad for him.
Right, I did
He
too.
Couldn't throw a strike.
I mean,
it's a lot of pressure on the guy.
If you threw me out there to throw the Vlad Guerrero Jr., he would have hit probably 2. So, but at the same time, it's more exciting with the timing and buzzer beaters.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Quotes, buzzer beaters, a lot of fun. But yeah, the home run derby is a lot of fun. But
I got it. So to talk about the All-Star game counting for home field advantage, I think with the system that you have now with fans voting, that would not work. But if you wanted to keep it to where the winner gets home field advantage for their league, then have the players decide who makes the All-Star game and then let the fans decide who starts. I think that would be a good system to have in place.
But is it fair to say, let's say the National League team wins 150 games and they make it to the World Series. The American League team that makes it to the World Series won 82. But since their All-Stars beat the NL All-Stars in one game in July, the AL team, which clearly
is inferior,
gets home field advantage. How is that?
You also have to look at who they're playing. The American League could be much better than the National League that year, or the vice versa.
But is one game
the American
like a coin toss?
Yeah,
like
I know.
That,
the All-Star game isn't,
or not a coin toss, but
the All-Star game is not a good representation of that. But exactly. I think it makes the game more interesting.
It does, I guess.
It does make the game more interesting, which is something baseball has that most other sports don't have, an interesting All-Star game. At the same time, I agree with Riley's point. I don't think you can determine potentially the fate of a team's season and whether they win a championship or not
based on how well their All-Stars did in July.
And they probably had at most, a third of the team, if they really dominate.
But most likely like 3 players.
Yeah, most likely like the Braves.
Yeah. So, very interesting. debate there. I think most people are in favor of them taking that out and just kind of playing the game for fun. Even though you do hear complaints of the guys, that are mic'd up and they're not really 100% paying attention to the game, but that's just kind of part of it with the All-Star. Just being selected as an All-Star is an honor. The game itself just kind of is for fun.
And I think that's a good thing, and you don't need to make everything around baseball or whatever sport of competition. I think it's just a good chance for the players to kind of let loose. And I think that would be true in your Pro Bowl or...
See, the Pro Bowl, does anybody really watch the Pro Bowl?
I mean, not really, but I think the NBA All-Star Game is a better example of that, coming in the middle of the season.
Does anybody really watch the NBA All-Star Game?
I mean, NBA fans do. But
Really? Okay.
I think the MLB All-Star Game is good, though, because players can try in this game without risking injury as much as a Pro Bowl or NBA All-Star Game could,
Right.
You get to see a lot better product on the field.
Yeah, and I think that, I haven't looked at the viewership numbers, but I think that the MLB All-Star Game, even though it does, quote, doesn't count for anything, it's still very well watched.
Yeah,
And
it's fun.
that's okay.
It's fun regardless, but I don't know. I just grew up knowing that it was going to count for home field advantage, So I think that's exciting.
Go back to your point from earlier, John, about you don't like that the fans choose who goes.
Right.
You don't like that at all.
Well, now it doesn't matter because it doesn't decide home field advantage or not.
Right, but being an All-Star versus not being an All-Star is a big deal for a guy's resume.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it should go to the person who has the best stats for that year, There's a lot of guys who, I don't know, I can't think of an example for this year, but there's guys who make the team that probably aren't as good as somebody else that...
Like Harper last year,
Right,
230 and making the team. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I get that. And also, people that are on the East Coast, somebody who plays in New York or Los Angeles is going to get more publicity than a superstar from, the Diamondbacks. I mean, Paul Goldschmidt dominated in Arizona for years, and people hardly heard his name.
Right. And one thing that is kind of a double-edged sword is every team must be represented in the All-Star Game.
I like that, though, because...
I think it's good because, like you said, it gets, publicity and every team is a part of it.
If I'm a Marlins fan and I don't have at least one Marlin there, why would I watch?
That's true. That's a good point, and it brings in more viewers.
That's why they do it.
But Paul DeYoung, I want to say is his name, made the All-Star Game over Dansby Swanson because there were no other Cardinals players on the team. There are 3 Braves on the team. And Dansby definitely had better stats and, arguably a better fielder. So, I understand why they do it, but it seems like you take it away from some guys that are a little bit more
We also have Braves
deserving.
bias, though. Maybe DeYoung actually is better. I've watched Paul DeYoung. I think he's a great player.
Well, that's your opinion.
You're going to have to take the other side of that. That's okay.
Well, maybe you could make the argument fielding, although Swanson is known for being a good fielder, but I know his average and his RBIs are much higher than DeYoung. No knock on the guy from the Cardinals, Paul DeYoung. He's a good player, but
Forever DeYoung.
not as good as Dansby Swanson.
Carson, if you were in charge of how All-Stars were selected for any kind of game, what would be your choice? Would you let fans do it? Would you let players do it? Would you let the media do it? Would you let the commissioner do it?
I kind of like how the MLB has it to where it's like somewhat fans, but then at the same time, each team has a player like representing their team, just so it brings in more viewership, and it's not so much like a bandwagon like bias towards like superstars, I guess, if that makes sense.
True.
So I think the MLB has a good balance of like fans and like each organization being represented.
And I could be wrong, but I think that the fans decide the starters. The reserves are picked by MLB.
Yeah, and I kind of wish they would do it. I think John said this earlier. I wish they would do it like the reverse way, like the managers and players vote on just a pool of all-stars, and then the fans get to decide the all-stars, the starters from that.
Gotta be careful. There's going to be bias there either way.
I think there's going to be less bias from players that actually know who they're playing with and respect those people than it is a fan just being like, oh, I like Bryce Harper. Let's just put him in the All-Star game because I like Bryce Harper.
Right.
Right.
Or just because you've heard his name.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah.
Because he's overrated. Exactly. Well,
that's for another pod.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have the final segment of the Southeastern Sports Podcast. Stick around.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SE Sports Podcast. Now, here's more of the show.
Final segment of episode 1 here on the Southeastern Sports Podcast. Once again, John Abrams, Braison Pierce, Walker Schumacher-Bailey, and Carson Barnett. I'm Riley Hubbard. We're winding down episode 1, guys. We've almost made it there. How does it feel?
Oh, my mic wasn't on. It feels excellent.
Excellent.
Yeah, well,
I'm sad. It's coming to an end.
well, there'll
There's
be
more
more.
to come. There's
Our
more to
maiden
come.
voyage.
There will be more fun in weeks to come.
One chapter ends, a new story begins.
Well,
C.S. Lewis said that.
the best way, I can't think of
Beautiful.
a better way to end episode 1 than talk a little Auburn baseball and basketball. Baseball team obviously just finished their road to at the College World Series a few weeks ago. However, there's still some news surrounding the program, namely Butch Thompson being promised that he would be given a facility out in right field. The one-story facility, I think $4 million, and construction was supposed to start on that in May. And if you look over there, it is still green space. What do you think about that, Braison?
I think they should give Butch justice. # justice for Butch. But seriously, they promised him the facility, and he made it to the final 16 teams in the country. You gotta keep your word on that.
That doesn't seem fair at all. That they come in on the bus and immediately have a 10% cut.
Yeah.
That just doesn't seem fair. And it's not just his team; it's every single program, 10% across the board. Obviously, something's going on with the athletic department, but that's a topic for another time. As far as the facilities, though, Plainsman Park is not among one of the best stadiums in the SEC for sure. Now, personally, I think it's a great venue as far as real estate on the campus. I think it's an awesome setting, but the facilities are lacking, and I think that eventually that's going to catch up to Coach Thompson's program.
And that's true for all of Auburn athletics,
Except maybe football.
Even then, we're still behind.
We did get a new locker room, so that's something.
That's good.
But we did blow a large sum of cash on a bigger jumbotron, a jumbo-er tron, if you will.
Auburn's still feeling the effects of Jay Jacobs' presence here. But Carson, what do you think about facilities, especially with basketball? You don't really think about basketball, but basketball, if they continue to play as well as they have, they're going to need some facilities outside of Auburn Arena.
I mean, yeah, I think it sucks that like it's obviously a good problem to be having that all your teams are doing so well that you want to push out as many new facilities as you can. But I do think we are lacking as far as SEC goes, whether it be Plainsman Park or just the football facility in general. But yeah.
I'm not sure about the East, but I know in the West, Auburn has some of the worst baseball facilities in the West.
Well, I went to Alabama Stadium this year for the first time.
Bama's is probably worse.
No, it's better.
Oh. Hey.
And see, there's the problem because Auburn is, I think most would say, pretty definitely a better baseball program than Alabama. But Alabama has better facilities because you look at top teams like Vandy, Mississippi State, they have really good facilities. Obviously, Auburn's not in that category, but they still definitely need to up it a little bit.
One thing I do know is we better not let Butch go.
Yes,
that's the thing.
If they promised him this when he was hired.
If he decides that he's had enough and he wants to go,
he very well could.
He very well could. But at the same time, he's built this. I'd be very surprised if he left.
It's just wrong. It's just wrong to do this to him when you promise this when you're hired.
I agree.
And I think you got to see coaching as what it is, and that's a revolving door. Butch Thompson, he's built a program at Auburn that's on the road to Omaha, getting to Omaha this year. But I think if he gets a better offer where he's promised concrete details on facilities and a chance to build a strong program, I think he's got to consider that.
Yeah, well, as far as baseball, moving away from the facilities specifically a little bit, there's a lot of excitement about the fact that prior to Tuesday, people thought 8 of the 9 starters would be returning from the lineup. after Tuesday, it's been revealed after Edouard Julien ends up taking a deal with the Minnesota Twins in the 18th round. The signing bonus was well above what was expected for that slot. 490 something, I think 492 million. Thank you. $493 million.
Thousand.
Edward would be.
That would be way.
I was about to say.
Excuse me.
He signed a minor league bonus. He didn't win
Listen,
jack
it's
pot.
Bryce Harper's making in 13 years.
Edward Julien, $1 million man.
It's the end of the day.
Almost billion.
$493,000. Decides that it is worth it to take that rather than return to Auburn. Puts a big hole with Auburn because now all of a sudden the shortstop and the third baseman are gone. Walker, where do you think that Auburn goes to replace them?
I think you got to go to the recruits coming in. I haven't taken an extensive look at the recruiting class, but you obviously have a lot of young talent interested in Auburn right now, and a solid recruiting class coming in that Butch Thompson has signed. And then I think
today we found out that another Canadian actually signed with Auburn, committed to Auburn, and has decided to forego his senior year of high school. So don't know who he is. Nobody knows who he is. Nobody knows how good he is. But very exciting if Auburn's willing to go to that extreme to sign somebody from Canada.
One could call him the Jake Bentley of baseball. Due to his skipping his senior year of high school.
Oh, okay. I was very confused.
Jake Bentley is very known for skipping his senior year of high school
Worldwide.
at Opelika High School
Yes.
to go to South Carolina.
But I heard that Bliss is moving to shortstop.
Yeah. So
that's an option.
So the holes will probably be at third base and second base.
So
Still,
the
I
most
think
popular idea that I have heard, and you can pick this apart as you would like, is that Bliss would move to shortstop and Brody Moore would take the space at second base. I would not be opposed to that. Brody Moore obviously came in for Kason Howell in center field when he had his concussion. Georgia series, played fairly well, and kind of a guy who can play everywhere. But that's still a big question mark though, because that's a guy who's not normally in the starting nine. As Walker mentioned, you have some new guys that are coming in. And, who knows what you can expect them to do, leading into spring, in fall practice and whatnot. Another big thing, though, Matt Shuffler was a catcher. He caught pretty much all year. I can't think of a game that he didn't catch. Two very, very talented catchers. The most talented one being out of McGill-Tulane, Nathan LaRue. Is going to come in and catch. I think that's a big get for Auburn because now Shuffler is able to split some time with another very talented offensive hitter.
Yeah, I think
Did Scheffler play catcher in high school?
He was a catcher.
Okay. I just didn't know if that's where he naturally played or okay.
It's just kind of unfortunate that he caught, almost every single game.
Yeah, I think it'll make Scheffler better. It'll make the team better having a good complement to him at the same position.
Yeah, I've been a part of a team where you have your A1 starters start Friday, Saturday, and then you have the Sunday starter who's familiar with the backup catcher and he gets to start on Sunday, something like that. Maybe we could see something like that with LaRue and Scheffler.
Yes.
But anyway, back to third base, big question mark there.
Big question mark there, and like Walker said, I don't know anything
Here's
about
a
the recruiting
suggestion.
class.
I have a question for the more baseball-oriented guys in here. As a casual Auburn baseball fan, I'm not really sure about this. How do y'all feel about Auburn's longevity as a championship program?
Butch Thompson has it going in the right position. He's certainly the guy for it. And I'm not going to say Auburn's going to go to Omaha every single year. And people forget the regular season was subpar at best this year.
6th in the West.
And, it's going to be hard to do it every year, but I think Auburn can be a consistent contender in the SEC for sure.
That's why I said we better not lose Butch, is because that's who's going to get you there, I think if we lose him, I don't know where we'll go. It's going to be hard to find someone that can get you to that.
A thing that I wanted to point out is now that the season is over, people start talking about the rotation. Obviously, Davis Daniel has moved on. Tanner Burns and Jack Owen still a part of the rotation, but Cody Greenhill it has been announced that in the fall he will attempt to transition from the closer role into a starting pitching role. Your thoughts on that, John?
I hadn't heard that.
It will be happening. Butch said it himself.
Well, I mean, he's a good pitcher. I think he's one of our best. So,
and I've seen him get 3 inning saves before, so it's not like he has issue with stamina.
I think he can do it. I'm excited to see it. You'll get to see a little bit more of him than you would in the bottom of the ninth, bottom of the eighth.
I'd be excited to see somebody who throws hard like that start, but at the same time, that makes me worried because he's not used to that position, hasn't started since high school. But at the same time, who's going to be your closer?
Yeah.
So that's a problem when you move somebody out the closer role to a starting role. Typically, you see it the other way around.
And I think another issue could be him learning not to throw as hard as he can on every pitch, because I think most relievers probably throw harder than starters just because of, most relievers are going 1-2 innings. Starters are going at least probably 5 innings. So that might be a difficult thing to transition to, but as long as he can carry that deer on his shoulders, he can start for our team.
Oh yeah, what on earth would telecast ever put on before he comes into the game if that footage didn't exist?
Static.
I know, just nothing.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, very excited for what could happen with Cody Greenhill, because I think most Auburn fans would agree he is the most reliable arm out of the bullpen. Also, some more excitement around Auburn is some recent alumni of the Auburn basketball program. Jared Harper, Bryce Brown, playing in Summer League.
And
also
Malik
can't
Dunbar.
And Malik Dunbar with the Warriors,
Yes.
right? And also can't forget about Chuma Okeke will be playing for the Magic when the season rolls around again. You guys have watched a little bit of Harper and Brown. What are kind of your first impressions of them, and what are their chances of really making the squad? We'll start with you, Carson.
I mean, we've been saying it for a while, just that they're both going to be solid NBA guards, so I don't think any of us are really surprised, more of as we expected.
You think they will make the roster, the NBA roster this coming season?
I think Jared will, I really do, and I think Bryce will too. I think both of them will be on an NBA team at the start of the season.
Because that's pretty difficult to make it out of the summer league and jump right onto the roster.
Yeah, I think it is difficult, but just with the numbers they've been putting up and the talent we know that they have just from seeing them play in college, that I think they can do it.
Mr. Pierce.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Carson. I think they can both make the roster. I think Brown will probably be in a smaller role, just given that the Kings, the Kings are a pretty good team, and Bryce's main thing is just he shoots threes, and there's not a whole lot else that he does exceptionally well. Not that he's a good defender. He can score inside, but 3-point shooting is his game. Jared Harper, I would expect to make the Suns roster, partially given their
very.
Well, Suns are just in the need of a
the Suns have a hole at point guard. Last year they played Devin Booker at a shooting guard at point guard, and
so that will definitely be an advantage for us.
Yes, and Jared Harper also seems a little bit almost like a Isaiah Thomas to me. Shorter guard who was discounted because of his size.
Tyler Eulis, who the Suns also signed, short SEC guard.
Yes, and he can shoot it well from 3, score deceptively well inside for his size.
I'm a big fan of SEC basketball, but I don't really get into pros a whole lot. But I think it's interesting that people, even after what he put up at Auburn, continue to discount him because of his size. I get that. But at the same time, he's in a guard position, and he's proven that he can shoot over the tall guys in college. Why would that be different in the college in the pro game?
And the biggest thing with him is just how big he comes up, like when he needs to. Like he's the most clutch player by far, I think, in the SEC last year.
Yes,
for sure.
True.
And one of the most clutch in the whole tournament, I'd say.
Yeah, and he wasn't just going up against SEC guards. He was going up against the best teams in the nation in Kentucky and North Carolina and Kansas.
Yeah.
We played Duke too, and he did well in that game.
And Virginia.
He held his own against literally every team.
Yeah, exactly. And he's doing it right now in the summer league. He scored 19 points in this last game, and for someone to go up against NBA type talent and score 19 points when he's 6 foot, 5'11".
That's very generous.
Also,
5'10".
That's extremely generous, John.
I wasn't sure of his height. I know he's short
because
he's short.
Teams
he's
want to
still
get their
scoring.
draft picks and their stud young players looks, not somebody they just signed a summer league contract. So
Yeah, exactly.
to not even be an official member of the team and
to go
perform
on
like that
19
And to go off that,
is making a
Bryce
statement.
Brown has gotten half the minutes that Kyle Guy has, and he scored 2 less points than him. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive to put up those kinds of numbers in such a short, window.
Kyle Guy, I don't think that you guys will ever not have a grudge on Guy. Andrew.
No Auburn fan ever will.
Yeah.
Also, looking forward at Auburn next season, they're losing a lot of talent. Obviously, those guys we mentioned, plus Horace Spencer. What do you guys think? How do you think we'll replace all that production?
I think it'll be okay. We've got they've got some good talent coming in, and Bruce is going to get them ready to play. So I'm not too concerned about it. It's not going to be a season like last year, most likely.
It's going to look like a totally different team out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally different team. I mean, as of right now, you've got Javon McCormick running the point.
Yeah,
And after that, it seems like you don't recognize anyone else other than Wiley.
Yeah.
well,
Freshman coming in, what's his
Okoro,
Isaac Okoro.
he's going to be good.
You also have Tyrell Jones, a point guard.
Tyrell Jones is very talented.
You have Jamal Johnson, a transfer who sat out last year, played with Austin Wiley in high school. He can play point guard. Samir Dowdy can slide over to the point. Yeah, so I think the point guard position will be all right. And obviously 2020, looking way ahead, Sharif Cooper is – a lot of people have him going to Auburn. Obviously, that would be a huge get for the program.
Well, Bruce Pearl has been getting the recruits somehow, some way, so it really wouldn't surprise me.
And we've got the talent. It's just if they'll play together like this team did this year.
And the thing with Pearls, he doesn't try to force any specific type of team. Like at UT, he was a big press just because that's what his team felt comfortable with. This year, we're a big 3-point team. That's his big thing, is just letting his team do whatever
Play to their strengths,
Exactly.
Definitely.
It's a good formula.
And, obviously in recent years, Mustafa Heron and Austin Wiley were the two biggest recruits to come in. He didn't try to force them as the focus of the offense. He just let the team play to its potential, whatever way that may be.
just one last point about Auburn basketball. I think Austin Wiley does have to become more of a consistent scoring presence inside for Auburn to be in contention for any kind of competition for the top of the SEC.
I agree. And I would piggyback off of that. I would say also D'Angelo Purifoy needs to step up and really take one of the main scoring roles on the team and leadership as well.
Well, you saw him get hot near the end of the season. Yeah, who knows what that looks like for the 2019-2020 season.
And obviously it's been rough on him, having to sit out 2+ seasons. Hopefully having back-to-back seasons, he can finally get going and live up to his full potential.
Well, guys, episode 1 was a lot of fun. Any last thoughts?
Audio Stephen Leith.
Audio Stephen Leith.
Chapone.
Well, a lot of fun. You guys talked about the Braves, talked about All-Star Game, talked about Auburn football, a little bit of Auburn baseball and basketball postseason stuff as well. We will be sure to be with you again soon. Looking forward to putting this podcast out on all kinds of platforms, including iTunes, Spotify, and Stitcher. But be sure to subscribe to us when we do hit it big and end up on those platforms. Thank you so much for tuning in to the very first edition of the Southeastern Sports Podcast. We'll catch you next week.
This has been the Southeastern Sports Podcast with John Abrams, Riley Hubbard, and Braison Pearson. Be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. For more coverage of Southeastern sports, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at SE Sports Podcast.